what was the most important thing for you and your team to preserve moving from Overwatch 1 to Overwatch 2?
The thing that I think is a hallmark of Overwatch is the way the heroes move.
We've actually slowed the movement acceleration rate of everybody in the game just very slightly.
The way that they kind of synergize with each other, and the way that all of our game modes and our maps demand teams to work together. You can't accomplish everything by yourself in Overwatch. You have to work with your team in order to do it. So we really wanted to preserve that.
Overwatch 1 was built around team play. Doing things together was foundational to how you had to play the game. Overwatch 2.0 plays nothing like this.
If the name Overwatch means anything to you, then you have probably suffered from a harrowing experience from which you have yet to mentally or emotionally recover from, and likely have trust issues with strangers concerning the completion of simple tasks. Actually, statistically, you may be part of the problem, and at least a good portion of you have overblame syndrome, a terminal disease which causes your fight or flight response to be replaced by a single option of blame, in which you harass the very first person you perceive to even remotely come close to making a mistake, which is normally just the first person you notice while respawning, and proceed to find them guilty of the crime of losing this game for you, despite the fact that the last time you or anyone from your try-hard stack were on fire was back in 2016. For anyone who isn't aware, Overwatch is a social experiment created by Blizzard Entertainment, which for 6 years now has proven that 6 complete strangers are incapable of working together. Moderately recently, at least within the context of Overwatch, where new content hasn't really been a thing since early 2020, unless you count the pointless content, which you absolutely shouldn't, Blizzard announced Overwatch 2, which is essentially the same game reimagined. And when I say the same game, I really do mean it, given that once the game finally pries its corpse from the gaping maw of the Overwatch development team, it will assume the role of the first game, and all owners of the first installment will now be playing the sequel, minus the updated effects and cooperative content. Personally, I actually like the idea conceptually. I think that reimagining the game in a context where at the heart of it, it keeps it as Overwatch is a nice fit. Adding new passives, changing up a bit of the physics, reworking just about every hero, adding a new map type and removing another, all of this creates an exciting vibe of new that makes things feel vibrant and unknown, while maintaining exactly what pulled audiences into the game in the first place. Well, that is, if their specific changes within each of these regards wasn't so awful. Where do I begin? How about passives, which I see as the dark horse of terrible changes here, given that it seems nobody is complaining about it? On the surface, this idea sounds absolutely phenomenal. Adding passives changes up the feel of the game and adds extra layers of strategy, while not changing anything that makes Overwatch Overwatch. But Blizzard, what are you thinking? Let's get the easiest one out of the way. Healers get self-healing. This is probably what I would consider a baseline for this kind of passives idea. I'm sure that there are more than a few gold healers out there who are praising the Lord Jesus that they will finally be able to get some self-sustain without having to burn an important cooldown or sacrifice 27 unmilked goats in order to somehow coax their eldritch abomination of a healing partner into glancing in their direction. At the same time, there are likely many Mercy players shaking their proverbial fists at Blizzard, questioning why their character is getting the Pathfinder treatment, much as feels Rectangle Man and Hogwash will be for our next example. And speaking of our next example, Blizz, can we talk for a second? Hey man, you've been hearing those complaints about CC for a while now, haven't you? Yeah, I could tell you're really shaken up about it, buddy. I mean, you keep talking about it constantly. And while you seem to care deeply about it, I think you're going about it in a kind of weird way. Okay, let's use a hands-on example. Go ahead and play this game. You see what I did there? A little harder to control your character, right? Okay, now try this. Okay, which was harder to deal with? The second? Yeah! So why does the tank passive affect knockback and not stuns? Okay, I'll admit, that's just a small gripe. Although to this day, I'm unsure of how Blizzard doesn't realize that having absolutely no control of your character is just about universally considered the most frustrating part of any game. But let's actually get back to the real issue. The real issue here is that both of these changes, the knockback reduction and the ult charge reduction when shooting tanks, just feel, well, I mean, look at DPS.
One of the things they get, the other thing they get that we heard about tanks, especially tanks like
That is what a busted passive looks like. SetoMarie, that passive sucks. It's such a small thing. It's one passive instead of two. Okay, let's have a little chat about player agency.
Agency.
Player agency is how the player themselves is able to affect the game, and it is important because you came here to play a game, not watch a movie. Player agency and power level, while often being intertwined, are not the same thing, and you can have a lot of one while lacking the other. Here's an example. Say there was a tank who was kind of like Bastion, but instead of actually choosing where you shoot, you just shot automatically, like a Torp turret. Now imagine this character had way more damage than Bastion, way more ammo, overshields like Bastion did in the beta, large health pool, and perpetual self-healing just to add icing to the cake. And for good measure, to really hit this analogy home, let's say this character automatically deployed to the objective every time they spawned, and was unable to move. This character would be so broken that tanks would essentially be forced to play them every game if they wanted a chance of winning. While this is true, tank players would end up losing out on the pitiful amount of player agency they had left. Why is that though? They got the strong character, don't they? Well, yeah, but what skill or strategy do they get to use now? They just hit a button, and so long as the other tank on the enemy team hits that button too, they're still no closer to winning the game. It'll be up to the other weaker characters on the team to devise a strategy and actually play the game to try to counter Superbot 9000 on the enemy team. While this, my friends, is the last thing tank players want due to losing player agency, and the last thing DPS players want due to already being so dependent on powerful tank characters as it is, this is the future the Overwatch devs seem to be continuing to march towards, continuously giving tank players power while stripping them of player agency. I mean, did you guys play that double health, half damage tanks experimental? Yikes. I shouldn't have to explain why movement speed as a passive is almost the definition of player agency, alongside being really powerful. But I'm here to speak to every rank, so for the golds and below, I'll use some playful examples without any actual explanation, because it's more fun. McCree moves faster than Reinhardt. Not good enough for you. It's okay. Okay, that was a low ball. I'll give you one that's a little more egregious. Reaper moves faster than Winston. Still not good enough. Okay, I'm about to say something that really hurts me inside, but bear with me. Widow moves faster than Winston. Is it sinking in yet? In case you genuinely just don't understand Overwatch, or for that matter basic logic, I'm just going to really quickly list out some of the things that move speed happens to benefit. Running away, surviving, getting back from spawn faster, positioning, chasing, flanking, etc. Essentially, move speed, even if in small amount, is easily one of the most potent aspects of a character's ability to impact the game that you can buff. A massive help to quality of life, and just about translates directly into adding player agency. My opinion on the tank passives is actually a bit more nuanced than it used to be. At first, I was convinced that the ult charge reduction wouldn't really be impactful for the tank themselves, but after thinking about it a bit more, I came to a different conclusion. It actually might feel pretty good, for us real gamers. The game punishes dealing non-lethal damage to tanks, as you will feed their support ults faster than you generate your own. At high ranks, it may become commonplace to avoid needlessly poking tanks, which will feel great for tanks. However, at the lower ranks, I imagine pumping lead into Roadhog's absolute girth on cooldown will still remain the norm. But sadly, after considering the matter further, things may well end up like this.
Hanbin doesn't lose his abilities, just loses them for 1 second, but takes him extra.
Okay, so while putting this video together, I found out we know a few other things about Overwatch 2 that I was unaware of. First of all, I was unaware that ult charge reduction also applies to healers healing the tanks. While this passive is still useful, given that robbing enemy poke damage of ult charge is worth somewhat more than the loss of robbing your healers of ult charge, as well as giving less ult charge when you inevitably die, this passive has essentially entered the realm of being extremely underwhelming. In essence, it's just about evening out the difference of the ult charge obtained from targeting big juicy tanks to that of targeting just about any other character. I won't bother you with the drawn out reasoning. Alongside this, I got to learn about the Brig and Mercy reworks. And what the hell? Brig has had her stun stolen from her shield bash in exchange for further distance, a reduced cooldown, and 45 extra damage. If a single one of you considers this a worthwhile trade-off, I'm sorry, bud. Gold must be pretty cruel to you. Brig's passive healing is also being nerfed, with the trade-off of her bash now proccing it. Again, I get it. Gold is a tough rank, man. I'm so sorry you're going through that. Stylosa, I cannot conceive how you call this new Brig tankier. None of this is as blatantly egregious as the Mercy rework, which I am so elegantly putting in quotation marks, because never have I seen a staple character of a game treated with such vitriol by the developers. When I heard about the new passive healers we're getting, I thought, oh, surely now that everyone will have the self-healing mechanic that only Mercy had, they must give her something to compensate, some sort of... But she got nerfed. Mercy got a nerf to her passive as well as her heal beam. I am absolutely stunned. With how powerful some of these other reworks have been, as well as the whole if everybody has Mercy's passive nobody does, I was sure they would make Mercy a lot stronger in some way. But clearly, from both of these changes, Blizzard hates healer players just as much as tanks. Blizz, if you want some actual advice on what to do with the support role, then watch Master Ian Gamer's video, The Wasted Potential of Overwatch Support Heroes. Okay, I'm honestly blowing things a bit out of proportion here, but this design philosophy is annoying. Now for a more pressing issue, it's time to address the elephant in the room, or should I say the lack of a second elephant in the room, cause holy hell they're removing a tank. That's right, because they were unable to make the role bearable over the years, Blizzard have finally keeled over and decided to just remove half of the necessity for tank players altogether, to meet the actual number of people willing to still subject themselves to the role. Good work, Blizzard. You literally, by definition, are so bad at making your game fun or balanced that you're resorting to marginalizing a minority. And to be completely honest, it's disgusting how many people are so openly pretending they don't understand what the actual problem is here. Why are you guys knocking it till you try it? Well, maybe because every tank player just realized that they are 50% as hireable to any team now, and every tank who had a dream of going professional essentially has to do twice the work and get twice as lucky. Yay, change! But they're just being whiny babies, aren't they? That isn't what you'll be saying when they come for you. But seriously, outright telling the community that you value tank players half as much as the other two roles is downright repulsive to anybody with a shred of morality or empathy. What makes this even sadder is that the remaining tank players who are getting shafted by this new change are the exact people who have stuck with Overwatch throughout the years, willing to endure the worst metas there were on objectively the most hated role, and kept the game alive at all by making sure that games within the new role queue system could even be played whatsoever. I mean, honestly, if you talk to just about any tank player today, most of the time they'll tell you something along the lines of, I just wanted to be helpful to my team when I first started the game, and my team happened to need a tank a lot of the time, so that's what I ended up maining. Really, Blizz? You're gonna punish the people who have been trying to hold together the social fabric of your game since day one, just because there's not enough of them and you're having trouble balancing your own game? How nice. I think what makes this situation all the more deplorable is the fact that the Overwatch team's rhetoric on the subject has been absolutely bipolar. Initially, back when the idea of 5v5 was pitched, just as an idea alongside an experimental card, They claimed they wanted to make tanks something akin to raid bosses in order to make up for having the importance of tank players within the Overwatch world by coaxing them in with promises of one super tank instead of 2 normal tanks. This philosophy, however, has seemed to be left in the dirt, as the changes the tanks are receiving, while often buffs, more suit the power levels of the reworks we've seen the DPS characters go through so far. This is most evident when you look at Reinhardt and realize that his overall tankiness has actually been nerfed in Overwatch 2, having a much more pitiful shield. Well then, tanks obviously aren't raid bosses now, but they can be brawlers, as the new rhetoric goes, right? Well, it's certainly going to be hard to brawl when half the lobby moves faster than you do. Remember how useful Reinhardt was during dive meta? Now imagine that always. The gravity of those passives is finally starting to set in, isn't it? Maybe literally. So tanks are being promised this extravagant recompense for being marginalized, and every time more content is released, it becomes more obvious that Blizzard is just feeding them platitudes without actually fulfilling any of these hollow promises. You guys sure do remind me more and more every day of politicians.
You know, I wish I wish they were just real in these kind of videos. Just say how it is, not like sort of, I don't know. It's like a political answer. It feels like.
I actually have a completely new idea I just thought of a couple days ago, but I have to preface this by telling a story. So a few days ago, my friend Will was telling me about a conversation he had with his friend. Will was arguing that Blizzard has been catering to DPS players in various ways, such as maintaining their more than 2-to-1 character ratio. His friend countered by pointing out that the damage role is technically a combination of 2 different roles, the former attack and defense roles. That got me thinking. Blizzard is coming into a lot of criticism because in order to balance their game, they've had to make a lot of hard decisions, and those decisions have had conflicting philosophies. On the one hand, Blizzard wants the competitive scene to be segmented into 3 types of player: damage, tanks, and supports, who each have their integral role in the team. At the same time, Blizzard continues to operate on their original design where there were DPS-type heroes designed for both attacking and defending, and each individually had just as many heroes as the other 2 roles. Why then don't they just split things up? If Blizzard wants to actually keep their game, touted as being about diversity and inclusivity, well, diverse and inclusive, then they need to treat each role equally. And an easy way to do this would be by separating the roles back into 4 groups. It's so perfect! Literally can fix your problem by using an old idea you had liked initially. How is that so hard to understand? This miracle fix does require a bit more thought, however, because while 6 is divisible by 3, neither 5 or 6 are divisible by 4. So how do we balance this then? What would be the point of trying to equalize the roles and treat everybody fairly if we can't actually balance the roles? That's no better than 5v5. But then, I remembered some of that new design philosophy Blizz has been oh so happy to rehash at us since the 5v5 announcements. Okay, hear me out, because I'm completely serious. 4v4, at least by the Overwatch development team's own words, and by their own game design philosophy, is perfection. First of all, that oh so important clarity and understanding that they mention they want in Overwatch 2 will be even more noticeable with 4v4 than with 5v5.
But it doesn't have like the kind of the clumped up chaos that you sometimes see of live. But it's also just kind of easier for the viewer and just people at home to track.
With only 80% the amount of clutter and chaos going on in the match, things will be much easier to follow for both the players and spectators. An important thing to consider according to both the development team as well as the Death of Overwatch video. Second, players will have more agency than ever.
With five players out there, there is a greater chance of certain people being able to carry. Whether that's the tank on the team or some of the DPS, there's just one less player on the other team that you need to take care of, and each player now has the opportunity to have a larger individual impact on their own team.
Gone are the days of only being 1/12 of the lobby and only having an 8% say in whether you win or lose the match. Now players will be 1/8 of the lobby, and their impact on the game will be felt much more significantly, even more so than would be the case with 5v5. Finally, 4v4 creates the perfect scenario for a balanced and fair roster. Everyone will be specializing just as much as every other role. No role will be privileged or disadvantaged as far as hero rosters or team rosters. This will also provide two less obvious benefits. For one, this will pull the game closer toward the shooter genre that everybody so needlessly seems to be obsessed with when defining the game. With half of each roster being a more traditional shooter class, the game will cater exactly towards the demographic that Blizzard seems so desperate to get the attention of. Finally, if you really think about it, 4-man groups are kind of a staple within the realm of gaming. It's essentially the go-to for co-op games, and will even make it easier for groups to transition from competitive to co-op seamlessly, without having to tell your 5th friend to screw up. Honestly, looking at this now, I'm baffled by how you guys didn't come up with this yourself. Maybe you were too scared, given this is a more drastic design change than just saying screw off, tank players. I mean, really though, you guys should hire me. Seriously, hire me. I have crippling student debt. But honestly, all of these rules, all of this forcing players into certain roles and certain characters, isn't it all starting to feel a little claustrophobic? I mean, when the game came out, you had 21 choices of character throughout the whole match. Today, even when you wait for 10 minutes just to get a cool role, you still only get 16 options. And at the worst, you have a measly 6 options. Doesn't it feel just a bit like the magic is dead? What's next? It says here, paragraph about how the game should go back to no limits, because at the heart of it, what drew people to Overwatch was its combination of so many playing styles and skill sets, and how it culminated in people pitting their unique capabilities against each other in a beautiful bout of skill and wit that was just too cool you couldn't help but feel like a damn anime character. Now taking away player creativity and enforcing more hero restraints is destroying this entirely, which is bad because it was the main draw of the game in the first place. So, yeah, all of that. Okay, I know this idea again sounds pretty drastic, but again, I feel like this idea would be good for the game because just like the 4v4 idea, it's based on the pre-existing game philosophy that Overwatch has had, albeit the exact opposite side of the spectrum from 4v4. And personally, this is the game I would much rather be playing. I think that someone's ability to impact the match should only ever be fettered by their own set of skills within the pool of potential hero kits. This current system punishes those who wish to help their team or have a diverse skill set without an obscene amount of specialization, while rewarding those who are too self-centered to actually accept that their specific skill with a certain character may not be so deific that they have no need to learn to play anyone else. While I don't actually have anything against one-tricks, or necessarily those who play only one role, I don't see why the system should reward this tunnel-visioned view of the game just because they complain louder in the forums. At the end of the day, what makes people feel the most trapped in any Overwatch match is the feeling that they can't do anything to impact the final outcome of the match. And while role queue was intended as an answer to this, being stuck with such a limited roster ends up only adding to this sentiment, as well as the sentiment of it's my bad teammates on the other roles, not me. Funnily enough, all of this was added in order to give players the feeling that they actually had the stability team comp-wise to win the game, and yet every lost match still has at least a few people blaming their teammates specifically for their character choices. So absolutely nothing has changed, other than queue times. At the end of the day, we all bought the same game with the same characters. I feel like it would be nice to be able to use them. Overwatch as a franchise feels like it's in kind of a game philosophy limbo. The devs are very insistent on bringing back those players who found the game not shootery enough, but Overwatch has only ever been a shooter in name. With several characters who don't actually shoot, as well as 2 entire classes specifically not for said shooting, the game is in itself a different beast, and trying to force it to be more of a shooter just to fit the name seems completely illogical. The devs must think the reason Overwatch is seeing such long queue times is because many of the players who are looking for a traditional shooter experience have left for other games, and as much as Blizzard may not like to hear this, that's okay. At the end of the day, those players will still have the same gripes with Overwatch because of Overwatch's very nature. If people don't want a game where someone can heal their damage, block their shots, or even revive their kills, they'll play other games. And all that changing all this will do is alienate people who came here to play Overwatch in the first place. I can't see how the Overwatch developers don't see this. It should be obvious. Blizzard, if you continue to homogenize Overwatch and make it like every other game, people will play every other game. Overwatch is dying because of the way they've set things up. Players are forced to specialize into one of 3 roles, but at the same time, it's evident Blizzard isn't treating each role with the same amount of care, creating a necessity for players to fill the less desirable roles, while treating those roles unevenly just can't work out well. For the longevity of the game, to me, the devs need to decide between one of 2 paths, that of specialization but equality, or that of freedom. This current indecisive philosophy will continue to cause grief as long as it remains. Hey guys, this is SetoMarie, or Owl. I know things got kind of heated during this, but I want everybody to just take this kind of lightheartedly. I don't actually mean any of this to cause any outrage or anything. I think that a lot of this stuff needs to be addressed, but I am just as excited as anyone to be playing Overwatch 2. I just wish the devs would kind of heed some of my advice on the whole game philosophy ideas that or problems I'm presenting here. I had a lot of fun making this though, and this is the first thing I've ever actually done for Overwatch outside of another channel where I just post like personal videos, but I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope I can do more of this kind of stuff in the future. Hopefully not this long. I did want to make another video talking about the hopes I have for Overwatch 2, as opposed to just the game design philosophy problems I see. And maybe I can make that in the coming days, although a lot will be revealed very soon. So if you guys would like something like that, let me know in the comments. There was some things that I was hoping would be in Overwatch 2, so I guess I'll just kind of list a couple of them right here. My main thing is that this is kind of something most people wouldn't think of, but I want them to keep fire. I think the fire system is really, really good for Overwatch, and I think it should be given more attention, and there should be like a way to see how long people have been on fire in a minute. I'm getting way too much into stuff, but I want them to retain that. I'd like medals removed. An Overwatch Classic mode would be great. There's a lot of stuff that I could talk about, and if anybody wants to see a video like that, just let me know. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't take anything too seriously, but I hope I gave you guys some thinking points. Thanks for watching.